Welcome back to r/neighbors from hell, where people share stories about their crazy neighbors, and if you are new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe to join our amazing community, and without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. The first one is titled, Ex-neighbor constantly blocked my parking spot, I got her towed, she threatened to sue me. So I live in an apartment complex with pretty crappy parking. Parking in a city is never fun, but when you only have about 10 parking spaces for your complex, it made it pretty difficult. My apartment complex was actually an old 3-story house that had been converted into an apartment complex with about 8 units. So even though there was only 8 units, let us say each unit has 2 cars, and well, you can do the math. It is not adding up at all. So the parking spaces that were assigned to the complex were free. There were parking spaces across the street, but those were considered city parking spaces and you had to pay coins in order to use them. Obviously, no one wants to do that because even though it was cheap, if you parked your car there every night, it would start to add up as well. Either way, my neighbor took advantage of this after she moved out. Hear me out. So, the girl who lived in the unit next to me had recently gotten a new job during this time. Her new job was about a 10-minute walk down the street. This worked out great for her. Because we lived in the city, everywhere you had to pay for parking or have a parking pass. So if she would have driven her car to work, then she would have to pay for parking by her work. Since she lived just down the street, she walked and saved money by keeping her car in our little parking lot. Well, about 2 or 3 months after her new job, she had saved enough money to move to a nice part of town. We did not live in the bad part of town, but it was not the safest either. Either way, I thought this was silly because if she waited a year or so, she could have saved up so much money. Especially because now she was moving, she would have to start paying for parking. Well, that is what I thought anyway. See, after she moved out of the apartment, I noticed that her car would appear in her old spot in the morning. She was driving her car here in the morning and then going to work, so she would not have to pay for parking. It was annoying, but I figured it was harmless because no one had moved into her old unit yet. A few weeks later, a nice couple finally did move into her unit, so I expected to not see her car parked there anymore. I mean, I was half right. It was not parked in her old spot anymore. It was parked in mine. I commuted about 15 minutes to work, so obviously I did not have the luxury of leaving my car at the apartment complex and just walking. However, one night I noticed when I came home from work that her car was parked in my spot. I was going to tell her something until I realized that she was nowhere to be found and was at work. With it being nighttime, I was ready to go to bed and had no choice but to park across the street and pay for overnight parking. This happened several more times and I was progressively getting more and more irritated. She was always at work when I was coming home, so I could never directly confront her. During this time, I found out I was pregnant with my first child. My fiancé and I were ecstatic, but as the first trimester developed, I was getting more and more tired. I considered leaving a note on her car, but I did not want this to be some petty fight. I wanted to speak to her face to face. One night I got off work, tired, and my feet were starting to swell, thanks restaurant life, and of course when I got home, her damn car was in my spot again. My fiancé was not home yet and I was just so irritated that I called an emergency towing company and they came out and got her car. I felt slightly guilty, but then I realized how dumb that was. I had been paying for parking at my house because she felt entitled to my spot for whatever reason. Well, this did not sit well with her. Because at about 6 AM the next morning, she came pounding on our door. My fiancé had opened it and was immediately met with our ex-neighbor who was screaming and crying. Yes, crying. I went to see what all the commotion was about and she was terribly upset and wanted to know where her car was. I told her straight up that I called a towing company to get her car because it was parked in my spot. I was tired of having to put money in a machine every night for parking. Besides that, I was pregnant and did not feel like walking across the street to park. Is that such a crime? It is. She began yelling at us that she could not afford parking and that she needed to use this space. I told her that I was tired from my shift last night and that she needed to leave the complex before I called the landlord and told him that she had been illegally parking in our parking lot. This enraged her even more, and she said that she was going to sue us for towing her car because she did not have her car to go to work and now she did not have any way to even go pick it up from the tow yard. I told her to order an Uber and slammed the door shut in her face. The next day, my fiancé had told me that one of his girlfriends had messaged him via social media and told him what bad people we were. That we left her stranded and she was struggling to pay rent, so that is why she could not afford to park at her own work. Listen, I consider myself to be pretty empathetic, but she should have just thought about that before she moved apartments and thought she could afford rent in the rich part of town. Not only that, but she also did not even come to speak to us if she could park in our spot or anything like that. If she would have come and spoke to us directly, instead of just assuming, we could have figured something out. But she was just so bratty and entitled, and now she was getting her friends to message us. My fiancé blocked her friend and we have not heard from her since, nor has our ex-neighbor showed back up to park in our parking space. I have no idea if she got her car back from the tow yard, and to be quite honest, I really don't care. That is her problem. Oh, and by the way, she never actually sued us. Never mess with a pregnant lady. And yeah, Ripe Stars, if you still enjoy the stories about crazy entitled neighbors, then please don't forget to like the video, because that would help my channel tremendously. Thank you so much in advance, your support is very much appreciated. The next one is titled, Should Have Paid Me Overtime. Many years ago, I worked for a large multinational software/hardware/consulting place that you will have heard of. We will call them employer. On this particular assignment, I was a small cog in a 300+ person project to run many of the IT systems of a major telecoms company. My particular responsibility was application support for the customer care area. This covered an internal web app that the client's help desk used to look up customer details, do upgrades, refunds, address changes, etc., as well as the public FAQ website and the email ticketing system used to communicate with their customers. Most of this software was written by the 15-person development team that sat a few short steps away from my desk, who were largely great to work with. I joined just as the first very small release went live, and with each new release they added more features and more help desk people. So, at the start, there were 2 of us supporting this app, with the idea that as more releases and features were added and the workload increased, they would add more people to the team to help out. So, the workload increases. After a few months, we have had the first 2 software releases, the number of users was ramping up and we are having more and more tickets to deal with. At this point though, the other guy on the team whispered in a few managers' ears and got transferred to one of the other work streams, but no one thought to replace him with anyone else. So now it was just me doing all the support by myself, which had the inevitable consequence of wait times for tickets going up. As an example, I had a very nice lady from one of the other support teams come over and politely ask me when I might get a chance to look at the ticket she raised. The conversation went something like this. Polite lady, hi there, I have a question about a ticket assigned to you. Me, sure, what's the ticket number? Polite lady, 123456. We need you to implement it before we can add a feature. Do you think you can look at it in the next few days? Me looks up ticket. Ah, it's a SEF3. SEF meaning severity, where SEF1 is a system outage, SEF2 is urgent but not critical, and SEF3 is basically the default, and SEF4 is nice to have. I then do some math in my head, thinking of all the other things higher priority than a SEF3, and reply the following. OP, 4 weeks. Polite lady, slightly stunned blank look. OP, that is if there are no SEV1 outages for the next month and no one raises any more SEFs too. Oh, and we are averaging 3 SEF1s per week right now. Polite lady, Oh, is there anyone else I can talk to? OP, no sorry, it's just me. That's why it will take 4 weeks. Polite lady wanders off. The reality of course is that I would never get to look at a Sev 3, which I think she realized. On-call rota. Since there were public-facing elements to the system, we also had an on-call rota in case of out-of-hours problems. There was a shared support phone, which I think was a Nokia 3310, whose ringtone still gives me PTSD when I hear it. The rota consisted of me and the guy who left for the other team as he still wanted to pull in some extra cash. You see, for all its failings, Employer actually had a really good overtime setup, which included the on-call time. We would alternate each week, starting on Monday evening and then being on call for all the time we were not in the office until the following Monday. So if I was in the office for 8 hours, then I would be on call for 16 hours and then work for 8 and back on call for 16, etc. So I was doing a roughly around 40-hour work week. I'd be on call for about 128 hours. We would get paid a quarter of our hourly rate for being on call, but then there is a bonus multiplier depending on if it is a regular work night, weekend or bank holiday. So I was basically doubling my salary thanks to the on-call gravy train. I mean, the 2 AM callouts were not so much fun, especially when you have to work for 5 hours to get the system back up again, then come back in the next day to deal with the fallout, but the money was good and I was young. I was not really doing much overtime other than the on-call and call-outs, as when you are repeatedly called out in the middle of the night, you don't feel much like going the extra mile the rest of the time. I was doing enough that we very rarely had an outage during the day, but did not have time to do anything proactive or think about long-term improvements. I could only just keep my head above water. I think the number of Sev 2s was actually increasing over time, and dealing with a Sev 3 was only a dream. I would occasionally have a meeting with one of the 3 service managers I reported to, who would moan a little about the number of old open tickets, but I would just ask them what my priority should be, and they would concede that I was doing the right thing. And yes, I reported to 3 managers, which worked about as well as you would expect, but that's for another time. So, email from management. I arrived to work one day and I am stopped by one of the support people from another team. Support person: have you seen the announcement? OP: what announcement? Support person: check your email. This happened at least 3 times before I've even got to my desk. I'm now intrigued and slightly fearful about what I might find. Has the project been canned? Are we going to get the project away day that has been rumored for months? My laptop has never taken so long to boot up, but when it does, the news is not good. Overtime payments are over. Starting in 2 months' time, all overtime will be compensated by time off in lieu. TOIL, yeah, that acronym is apt. No more doubling of my salary, no more nice holidays, no more... Wait a second, I've just reached the bit where they explain how the amount of TOIL is calculated from the amount of overtime. That cannot be right. I go to the spreadsheet I used to track my hours and start making some edits based on the email. Edits complete. I start trying out some numbers. Well, what do we have here? A plan is forming. And now the compliance. For the next month I do just a little bit of overtime each day, sometimes an hour, sometimes more. If we have a bad week for Sev 1s and callouts, then I don't do as much, but if we have a quiet week, then I'm staying after hours every night. A week or 2 into my new regime, I have a meeting with the service manager and they are now a bit happier as the ticket queue has actually gone down for the first time in ages. I say nothing about the TOIL, and as the meeting is ending, they are actually surprised I did not bring it up, as they've been getting an earful from all the other support people. I play it down and say that I have not really thought about it yet, but I'm sure it will be fine. The meeting ends with them thanking me about taking it so calmly. I just smile. After working like this for a month, it is now time for phase 2 of the plan. I book a meeting with one of the service managers and bring my laptop with the overtime spreadsheet. The meeting goes something like this. OP, I have some concerns about the upcoming TOIL change. Service manager, suddenly bored. Do you? What are they? OP? Well, I track my hours in this spreadsheet so that it is easier to submit my overtime payments. And I thought I would update it to support the new TOIL process. Service manager slightly suspicious. Okay. OP? Well, if you look at my hours for the past month and look at the weeks when I'm on call, then the amount of time off that the project will owe me is calculated as this much. Points to cell. Service manager. Right, what's the problem? OP, do you not see the issue? For this week where I'm on call, I am owed 41 hours of time off, but I'm only contracted to work 37 hours per week. Service manager puzzled frown. What does that mean? OP, it means that for any week that I'm on call, I would have to take the entire next week of work paid for by the project. No work would get done on my work stream. No tickets would be completed. No change requests and no root cause analysis will be done. We'd only be able to do half the number of tickets that we currently do, and that's already pretty low. Service manager. OP, not only that, but the extra few hours over my contracted hours will gradually add up so that at some point I won't even be able to be on call for the full week. Service manager fully awake now. Take me through the math again. Yes, you see, for the previous months I'd been making sure that I had done just enough overtime clearing down tickets that the amount of TOIL I would be owed under the new system would be more than my contracted hours. The service managers couldn't complain about the extra hours as they wanted the ticket queue to go down, and the project managers could not complain as this was their idea in the first place. The service manager said to leave it with him, and the meeting ended. And now the aftermath. 2 weeks later, an email came out from management saying that the TOIL change was being postponed. I would like to think that it was all my doing, but it may have also been the fact that many of the support people were talking about getting their names off the various on-call rotas, as it was not really worth doing just for time off. Management just could not make the TOIL rates worse either, as they were mandated by the company, so they did not really have a choice but to back off once they were shown the numbers. As for my work stream, the service managers seemed to get the hint, as within a few months the team had grown from just me to 4 of us. I finally had the time to do preventative maintenance, as well as spending more time talking with the development team. This eventually allowed me to move to a role that was 50-50 support and development, which started me on the path to being a full-time software developer. The on-call gravy train chugged along for another couple of years until the whole company watered it down from a quarter to 1/10 of the hours. The project never switched to TOIL. So today, guys, while I was working, someone visited me and stayed below my chair. And obviously I have to be very difficult that I don't roll over that someone. Show me Disney. She really liked to be under this chair. And as you can see, she's really getting bigger. My Disney. Really cute. Disney. Also, what I noticed, what's really interesting, I've never done this before with any other cat. If you show a cat other cats meowing, like on YouTube or something, the noises they suddenly make are like completely different than the meow they use for humans. And actually a while ago I read that the meow that you usually hear from cats, it's actually only what they use for humans. So they would not really use that kind of meow for other cats, if I'm not completely mistaken. And indeed, when you show her the other cats meowing, then she makes different noises. It's very interesting. And here temporarily I have, here you can see Disney. Oh, I need to rewrite that. Temporarily have her house in my room, but I think I will bring it up to my girlfriend. Ooh, and as you can see, she's quite strong. Disney. And ripe stars, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you still cannot get enough of my content, then I would highly suggest to check out my endless binge watch playlist, which will soon show up in the left corner of the screen. In addition, I would really appreciate it if you could not only subscribe to the channel, but also turn on the bell notifications, which you can do by clicking on the little bell icon right next to the subscribe button. This will help my channel tremendously, and this will make sure that you don't miss any of my videos. Furthermore, if you want to see additional ripe content that I don't post on YouTube, then I would suggest to head on over to patreon.com/ripeyoutube for more than 50 exclusive videos that you will not see anywhere else. Thank you so much for your amazing daily support, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.